I want to start today by asking you to just visualize a really specific moment. I have a feeling this is going to feel familiar, maybe a little too familiar.
Okay.
It's Sunday afternoon. Let's call it 4 p.m. The sun's coming through the window, at that low angle. You've had a brutal week,
Wall to wall.
just completely wall-to-wall meetings, deadlines, but you made it.
Yeah.
You've even finished your chores, the laundry's folded, the house is quiet, and for the first time in, 6 days, you sit down on the couch.
That golden hour, the moment where you should finally be able to just exhale.
Exactly. It should be pure relief. But instead, you feel this sudden creeping sense of danger.
Mhm.
It's physical. Your chest tightens up. You feel like you're doing something wrong. Your hand, almost by itself, reaches for your phone to check email.
Just in case.
Just to make sure nothing is burning down. You can't just sit there.
It's that inability to just be. It's the sensation that if you aren't moving, if you're not, producing something, then you aren't really existing.
It feels like hustle has become the air we breathe. I mean, we've been reading through this huge stack of articles for this deep dive, pulling from all over, and they all kind of circle this one specific anxiety.
Right.
It feels like we've been running a marathon for years, but every time we look up, the finish line has moved another 5 miles down the road.
And I think that raises the core question we want to get into today. You've been running that marathon, pushing through the pain, but are you actually getting anywhere? Or are you just wearing out the machinery?
So today we're unpacking the trap of toxic productivity. And I want to set the ground rules right up front because the tone here really matters. This is not a motivational session.
Right at all.
We are not here to shout at you to wake up at 4 a.m. We're not here to give you a checklist on how to squeeze another hour out of your day.
Quite the opposite. The mission here is to really distinguish between healthy productivity, the kind that fuels us and gives us a sense of purpose, and toxic productivity, which, based on all this research, is, it's actively eating us alive.
Yeah.
We want to create a safe space to understand why we know, logically, that we need rest. But emotionally, we feel guilty the absolute second we stop moving.
Let's start with definitions then. Because productivity on its own, it sounds like a good thing, a virtue.
Of course.
We all want to be productive. We want to contribute. So at what point does that desire sort of curdle into something toxic?
It becomes toxic when the relationship you have with your work shifts gears in a really fundamental way. The definition we found in some of the source material frames it as an unhealthy obsession where your self-worth gets measured purely by the volume of work you do.
The volume, not the quality.
Exactly. Not the quality, not the meaning of that work. It's just about the quantity.
So it stops being about the outcome and it just starts being about the act of suffering for it.
In a way, yeah. It's when you're doing things not because they need to be done, but because you need to feel busy, to feel valuable. It's a subtle shift, but it's a really dangerous one.
How so?
You start measuring your day not by what you achieved, but by how exhausted you are when you finally go to bed.
Wow. That is a heavy distinction. It reminds me of this really interesting metaphor in the sources about a mask. What's being covered up there?
This is such a crucial psychological insight. It moves us away from just talking about work habits and into, emotional survival.
Right.
Often, this hyperproductivity, it acts as a mask to cover up insecurity or fear or just this internal void. If I'm constantly moving, constantly answering emails, constantly crushing it, I don't have to sit in the quiet. I don't have to deal with difficult emotions.
It's a numbing agent.
Exactly. It's a way to numb yourself through activity. If you stop, the silence rushes in, and in that silence, you might have to face feelings of inadequacy, maybe loneliness, or just the general stress of being alive. So you keep running.
So we're basically using spreadsheets and Slack messages to hide from ourselves. That lines up perfectly with a point from one of the other articles about how we've turned this into a status symbol.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, think about it. If you run into a friend and ask how they're doing, and they say, "Oh man, I'm just so busy, I'm swamped," it's often said with a little bit of pride, right? Like it's a badge of honor.
We've completely internalized the idea that busyness equals importance. The logic goes, well, if you aren't overwhelmed, clearly you're not important enough. If you have free time, you must not be in demand. We wear our burnout like it's a medal.
But the sources all highlight that there's a massive physical and mental toll to wearing that badge of honor.
A huge one.
Let's talk about that toll, because we're not machines, no matter how much we try to act like them. What happens to the actual biology of a person who never turns off?
Well, we absolutely aren't machines. When you're in that state of constant hustle, your body is effectively locked in a chronic fight-or-flight mode.
Right.
You are just flooding your system with cortisol. Now, fight or flight is great if you're running from a tiger in the jungle.
Hmm.
It is terrible if you're sitting in an ergonomic chair for 12 hours a day answering emails.
It just destroys the body from the inside out.
It degrades your health over time. One of the sources brought up the Japanese concept of Karoshi,
I've heard this term, that's death by overwork.
literally death by overwork, usually from a heart attack or a stroke that's induced by stress or even starvation because the person just forgot to eat.
That's horrifying.
It is an extreme example,
Hmm?
but it shows you where this road ends if you never take an exit.
Yeah.
And it's not even just the extreme cases that worry me. One of the sources cited a study that I found just staggering.
Was this the one about guilt?
Yes, over 60% of office workers admitted they feel guilty when they rest, even when they're allowed to, even when the work is done.
60%. That's
Yeah.
that's most of us. We're sitting there, the task is finished, the boss is happy, but we are internally beating ourselves up for taking a break.
Because we've internalized this image of the ideal worker who is always on. And it creates this deep conflict between doing and being.
One of the sources touched on that. This struggle to just be, if we aren't doing something, we feel like we don't exist. It's actually scary how much we've pangled our identity up with our to-do lists.
It's almost existential.
I produce, therefore I am.
And if I stop producing, do I stop being? That's the real fear.
But I want to play devil's advocate here for a second, because I know people listening are thinking, okay, this is deep, but I have a mortgage. I have a boss who expects results.
Of course.
If toxic productivity is the bad guy, what does healthy productivity actually look like? Is the alternative just being lazy and, letting the team down?
Not at all.
Exactly.
And this is where the conversation gets really useful, I think, because we need to redefine what it means to work well. Healthy productivity isn't about doing nothing. It's about strategic energy management.
Okay.
A key concept here from one of the articles is the difference between shallow work and deep work.
I see this term deep work thrown around a lot online, but what does it actually mean in practice?
So shallow work is what consumes most of our days if we're not careful. It's the distracted stuff. Checking Slack every 5 minutes, responding to non-urgent emails, sitting in meetings where you aren't really needed but you feel like you should show face.
Right.
It keeps you busy, it drains your energy, but it doesn't actually produce that much value. You end the day exhausted but feeling like you've accomplished nothing.
Which just feeds the cycle, because then you feel like you have to work late to do the real work. It's a trap.
Precisely. Now, you contrast that with deep work. This is the flow state. It's focusing intensely on one significant task. Writing a strategy doc, coding a feature for a set period of time with no distractions. When you work this way, you actually energize your brain. You produce really high value. And the kicker is, you can't do deep work for 12 hours a day. Humans aren't built for it. It requires you to work fewer hours but with higher intensity, and then fully disconnect to recharge.
So healthy productivity is really about working with a rhythm instead of just constant noise. This totally aligns with what another source called slow productivity. They use the tortoise and the hare analogy.
Yeah, that was a great take on it.
Which usually feels like, a cliche, but they spun it differently.
They did. We usually think of that story as slow and steady wins the race. But the deeper insight they offered is that the tortoise actually finishes the race. The hare burns out.
The hare is toxic productivity.
Exactly. Sprinting, stopping, panicking, sprinting again. Healthy productivity is strategic slowness. It's pacing yourself so you don't crash and burn before the finish line.
Speaking of crashing, there was a specific number mentioned in that article that I think every manager and every employee really needs to hear: the 50-hour threshold.
This is a hard mathematical reality that corporate culture just loves to ignore. The studies are clear. Productivity plummets after 50 hours of work in a week.
So if I'm pulling a 70-hour week to impress my boss,
Those extra 20 hours, they're practically useless. You are producing more output. You're just creating more mistakes and fatigue that you're going to have to fix next week.
you're working for free.
You are essentially working for free and doing a bad job at it because your brain's gray matter is just fried.
So working harder, it literally breaks the machine. It's diminishing returns.
It is negative returns. And that
Yeah.
connects to the 80-20 rule that another one of the sources mentioned.
Okay, usually when people say 80-20, they mean like 80% of results come from 20% of the work. Is that how they're using it here?
A slight twist.
Yeah.
In this context of mental health, healthy productivity accepts that 80% effort is often enough.
Ah.
We have this perfectionist drive to give 100% or 110% to everything, every email, every minor slide deck. But that leaves 0% for life.
Right.
The 80-20 rule here means allowing for that 20% of life that is rest or cheat meals or just doing nothing. It's accepting that you don't need to be perfect to be effective.
That sounds so liberating, but I feel like if I tried to do that tomorrow, if I just decided 80% is good enough, I would panic. Why is it so hard? Why do we keep falling into this trap even when we know the math doesn't work?
It goes so much deeper than just bad time management. It's existential. One of the main drivers is the fear of irrelevance.
The fear of being left behind.
Yes, in this hyper-competitive world, we have this just gnawing fear that if we step off the treadmill for a second, everyone else will just pass us by. We feel we aren't enough just as we are.
So we have to earn our spot.
We feel we have to earn our place on Earth every single day.
There's also a huge social dynamic to this. One source discussed survivor guilt in the workplace. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it makes total sense.
It's a really common phenomenon, especially in these high-pressure environments. Just imagine this. You finish your work at 5 p.m., you've been efficient, but you look around the office and you see your colleagues staying until 7 or 8. Even if you've done your job perfectly, you feel this sense of betrayal if you leave on time.
It feels like you're abandoning the tribe.
Exactly. You feel like you're breaking solidarity. So you stay, even if you're just staring at a screen, just to prove you're in the trenches with them.
Mm-hmm.
The social pressure of the group keeps you in that seat.
It's just comparison culture, and social media just amplifies it to a deafening level. You open up your phone and it looks like everyone is launching a startup, writing a book, and training for a triathlon all at the same time.
And you're comparing your internal struggle with their external highlight reel. You see all their wins, but you don't see their burnout or their strained relationships or their anxiety.
Right.
It just reinforces that feeling that everyone else is doing more than you.
Yeah.
And underneath all of that is the one word that high achievers fear more than anything else.
Lazy.
That word is terrifying to people who identify as productive. We overcompensate wildly just to avoid anyone, especially ourselves, applying that label to us. We would rather be exhausted than be called lazy.
So, how do we start to untangle this? Because we can't just quit our jobs and move to a cabin in the woods. We need a way to recognize this in ourselves without, beating ourselves up more.
Recognition without judgment. That's the absolute first step. We need to stop judging ourselves for falling into this trap. I mean, it's designed to catch us. One of the sources suggests a simple mirror check. It's just about observing your own reactions in real time.
Okay, so what should we be asking ourselves during this mirror check?
Ask yourself this. When you finally get a free hour, a meeting gets canceled, or it's a quiet Saturday morning, what is the very first emotion that hits you? Is it relief? Or is it panic?
Oof. For a lot of us, if we're being honest, it's panic. The I should be doing something, panic.
If it's panic, that's a signal. That is the red light on the dashboard. Another question to sit with is, are you working this hard because you love the goal or because you're afraid of what happens if you stop? Are you running towards something or are you running away from the silence?
That's a difficult question to sit with because running toward a goal feels so different from running away from fear.
It does. But we don't need to judge the answer. Just notice it.
Yeah.
And also, listen to your body's signals.
Yeah.
You mentioned feeling tired but wired earlier.
Yeah, that feeling where you're just exhausted, your eyes are burning, but your brain is buzzing and you can't sleep.
That is a classic sign of toxic productivity.
Mm.
Healthy fatigue, like after a good workout or a day of deep work, that leads to deep sleep. It feels satisfying.
Right.
Tired but wired means your cortisol is still spiking. It means your body doesn't feel safe enough to power down. It's screaming for a break, but your mind just won't let it.
So if we're feeling that, if we're realizing we're in the trap, how do we shift our perspective? We talked about not giving a checklist, but surely there's a new mental framework we can try to use.
The shift is gentle, but it's really profound. It's realizing that you do not need to earn your right to exist by completing a to-do list. Your worth is inherent. It's not conditional on your output.
I really like that analogy from one of the sources about the battery. It's so simple, but it's something we get wrong with ourselves constantly.
We really do.
Yeah.
I mean, think about your phone. You don't wait until your phone is at 0% and just shuts down before you charge it.
No.
You charge it so it can work. But with ourselves, we treat rest as a reward. I'll rest when I'm done. But the work is never done.
The inbox is never empty.
Never. We need to flip it. Rest is not a reward for work. It is the prerequisite for it. You rest so you can be a functional human being. Rest is just maintenance.
That takes the guilt out of it. You're
It's
not being lazy. You're performing maintenance. You wouldn't call a race car driver lazy for taking a pit stop.
exactly. You are protecting the asset,
Yeah.
and the asset is you.
As we wrap this up, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that this is a long game. We're trying to unlearn years and years of programming that says more is better.
It is a process.
Yep.
And it's okay to take it slow. In fact, taking it slow is kind of the whole point. We need to be gentle with ourselves as we try to unplug from this matrix.
To leave you with something to think about, there is a provocative thought in one of the articles that really stuck with me. It's a bit of a challenge, but a gentle one.
It's a question that cuts right through all the noise. I just want you to imagine this. If you took away your job title and you took away your to-do list today, who would you be?
Who would you be?
If that question scares you, if you feel a blank space there, that is exactly where your real work begins. And that work doesn't happen in the office. It happens in learning to like the person who exists in the quiet.
Thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We hope this helps you find a little more of that quiet this week. Take care of yourselves.